Okay, so in this SuperDale presentation, we're going to go through and take a look at how to actually install Active Directory. Now I've got here a Server 2008 R2 box up and running. Very easy to do as far as installing Active Directory. A couple different ways that you can do it, or Microsoft has a couple different recommendations. You can come in and add it as a role. So I'm going to come down here and select the server role, the server manager role, or server manager console. Sorry about that. Come down to my roles section, and here I'm able to see what roles I currently have installed. Now in this environment here, I don't think I have anything installed, so I can select to add a role, and it goes through what I refer to as the 4-hour wizard, because I believe in the Scotty method from Star Trek, where you double the time so you look like a hero. So I'm going to hit next here, and I'm going to select to install Active Directory Domain Services. It kicks out and tells me that it needs to also install .NET Framework 3.51. I'm going to go ahead and add those features. I'm going to hit next and install. And this goes through and installs the role. But it doesn't really do anything for Active Directory, such as performing a DC promo. After it's done, the main command that we actually use to install Active Directory is DC promo. Now here's the quirky thing that I mentioned earlier, is that the other way that you can install is just simply to do a DC promo, and by default it'll install this role service. You don't have to actually go through this step. So let's see, after that's done. After it's done, we get a report back showing us that it was successfully installed. I hit OK, and it even tells you here that you can close this wizard and launch DC promo. I'm just going to go ahead and hit close though. You'll notice that I do have it listed as a role that's being installed, and I've got an error here that's popping up. The error is just telling me that Active Directory isn't really installed. So I'm going to come down here into the start button and just simply type in DC promo. Hit enter. DC promo starts up, and I have a couple different options. I can select to do the advanced installation mode if I want. This gives me the ability to do something such as install from media as far as Active Directory. That concept is based off the fact that, let's say that I've got a domain controller that I need to deploy down in a remote location. I can take Active Directory off of an existing domain controller and export it out, send it to them on a DVD, and then as they go through the installation, they can actually pull Active Directory in the database itself, and then when they go to replicate themselves, they only have to do the delta changes since the backup was made. But because this is my first domain controller, I'm just going to go ahead and hit next. It just gives me some information here concerning the security settings and interoperability with older OSs. And I'm going to select here, I can either join an existing forest, but I don't have one, so I'm going to go ahead and select to create a new domain a new domain in a new forest. So now it's asking me for the FQDN, and in this case I'm just going to go through and use, we'll go Wayne Corp. Now you don't have to use a com or an edu or a .net that you may have as far as a domain name on the outside, or at least out on the internet. Matter of fact, best practices is to keep it completely separate from your online presence. So I'm going to do Wayne Corp. I'm going to select next. It's going to go through and check to make sure that there's no other domain in the forest that's named Wayne Corp. It's also verifying the NetBIOS name. And then it kicks out and says what's the forest function level that you want to implement. The default for Server 2008 is to be in a 2003 infrastructure mode, or I should say a function level. There we go. This makes it so that my domain controller could talk to older domain controllers as I'm possibly going through an upgrade process. Once you upgrade it to a 2008 or 2008 R2 function level, there's no way of going back. So the only time that we upgrade to these levels is once we've decommissioned any older operating systems that are running Active Directory. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. It's going to check DNS. Now, currently I don't have even a DNS server here. So what's going to kick out on me here is it's going to tell me that I need to install DNS, and do I want to do that? Actually go through and create my zones for me within DNS. Okay, so after it's done install, well, it's actually gone through and detected that I don't have one, so it's mentioning here that it's going to install DNS. It also, by default, I have to have at least one global catalog server, and so that's grayed out. I have to have a global catalog server. I'm going to go ahead and select next. It tells me that I've got a dynamic IP address. This is usually a configuration issue when it comes to IP version 6, because by default IP version 6 is set up to be dynamically assigned. I haven't seen any issues with having a dynamic IP version 6 address, while you still need to make sure you have a static IP version 4 address. So I'm going to go ahead and hit yes to go ahead and install. It then kicks out and says, where would you like to keep the database for Active Directory as well as the log files, and where would you like to keep the sysvol folder? We'll talk about what each one of these do for us, but the overall concept here, or the best practices by Microsoft, is to try to keep the sysvolume folder away from the OS, as well as the log files and the database files. Get them on separate spindles if you can, just for better performance. I'm going to go ahead and hit next in this case, because I'm in a virtual environment. And it's asking me for a password. Now this password is used to recover Active Directory. It's not the administrative password. So I'm going to just type in a password here real quick. Hit next. And of course it gives me a whole summary page of what it's about to do. Here's where I can go through and export those settings if I wanted to do some unattended setup files. Just going to go ahead and select next. And of course Active Directory is going to install. I'm going to go ahead and let this run. And then I'm going to go ahead and select reboot on completion just to make sure things are thorough. And I'll come back to you as soon as it's done installing. Bye. Okay, so now that the machine's rebooted, I'm going to go ahead and log back in. And I'm going to go through and just double check to see. I should actually get my server manager console should pop up here on me, which will tell me if it's successful. If there's any errors, it'll still show those errors. One of the best ways to see if it were installed correctly is just see if you've got your components for Active Directory. So here's Active Directory for users' computers. I go through and open that console up. Oh, there's the server manager popping up on me. Well, I take that back. My server name's Batcave. I completely forgot about that. So you can see that server Active Directory is installed, as well as DNS. You can also tell that by expanding out the roles and getting into their consoles. See, there's a forward lookup zone for Wayne Corp. You can also come into your Active Directory for users of computers, expand it out, and there are my containers. Here's the actual users of computers MMC. So I can come in here. And I'll even go through and do things like create a new OU, just so I can make sure everything is working correctly. And even create possibly a new user. And there you go. That's how easy it is to install Active Directory. Our future modules will go through and show you how to add some additional server components like SharePoint, SQL. Please check back with us and subscribe.